This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.
Hello everybody, this is Paul Neeson with the Raw Life Health Show, and today I'm making one of my favorite recipes. It's a very simple recipe. I believe the more simple we keep the recipes, the more likely we're going to stick to being consistent at eating a healthy diet. I will make some complicated recipes for you from time to time, but remember, the more complicated a recipe is to make, the more complicated it most likely is for the body to digest. So the simpler you keep the recipe, the simpler it usually is on the body. And that's our ultimate goal, is to improve digestion. That's why we're looking to eat healthier, to eat a raw food diet or a vegan diet, is to make it less complicated for us to digest this. So we have our new studio here, which we're in, and we'll be doing a lot of recipes here. And this is kind of the test run here. This is the first video we're making in a new studio. But today we're going to be making a papaya smoothie. And this is something a lot of people really don't think about making when they look at a papaya, because it tastes so great by itself. That's what I prefer. But papayas grow quite often here all over South Florida on trees. Within 5 months or 6 months, you can have a tree with papaya growing on it from a seed. So they go pretty fast. This is a Mexican papaya actually, and there are different types of papayas. This one is a male papaya because it's long, and they also have a round one, which is considered a female. Now, there are smaller papayas you might find in some specialty shops. They're papayas that come from Hawaii, and I don't recommend those because they are one of the papayas, one of the foods that are on a GMO list, so they are definitely genetically modified. The big papaya is not genetically modified, however, it is very hybridized. Sometimes when you cut these open, there's many seeds, and sometimes when you cut them open, there's none. So you want to make sure or do your best to get the foods that have as many seeds in them as possible, the better for it. And when you get these seeds, you can just throw them on the ground somewhere, and like I said, you'll have a tree quite quickly. So today it's very simple ingredients. When I talk about making recipes more complicated or not complicated, one of the things it comes down to is how many ingredients are in there. The less ingredients, the less complicated. And also, if you can pronounce what those ingredients are. So when you look at the box of something, or the back ingredients, if you can't pronounce those words, chances are it's not something that's good for your body. So this is one of the simpler recipes. I think making smoothies, soups, and salads are very helpful when you want to switch to eating a raw food diet, because once you learn how to do those, it kind of lays the groundwork for how to use particular machines, and also the different flavors and the different tastes that come from particular machines. And they could all be used together. I mean, a soup could be a salad and it could be a smoothie, just depending how sweet it is or how thick it is. And you can control the consistency by how much liquid you're using it or not using it. And that's what's fun about playing around with these different types of things. So we got this papaya here, and there's many different ways to skin a papaya, so to say. But I'm just going to cut it right down the middle here, as so. Okay, so we cut it right down the middle, and this one does actually have a good amount of seeds in it. So that's a nice looking papaya. Okay, and something about the papaya that I also want to mention is, a lot of times you'll go to the supermarket and you'll see the papaya like this in a plastic wrap. Now once you cut the food, and this happens with watermelon a lot also, once you cut the food, it starts oxidizing, and that means the enzymes start depleting. So you want to try to get your food whole if possible and cut it yourself and not buy it like this. One of the reasons they do this in the store is when a papaya starts going bad, I mean this one's perfectly yellow, but when a papaya starts going bad, you could just cut out the bad spot, and the rest of the papaya is still wonderful. That's a good sign that it's ripe. When the whole thing is bad, then you know it's overripe. But if just one spot's getting ripe, you still know it's ripe, as opposed to getting a papaya green from the store and just not knowing exactly how well it's going to ripen or not. So you get a papaya, and that's a good tip. I'm getting them cheaper as well. If you see them in the store and they have a rotten spot, buy that one. It's most likely cheaper, and just cut it around to yourself. But in the store, they'll do that. They'll cut it like this, and they'll sell you this piece for the same price that you can get the whole one from. So what I'm going to do is simply take a spoon here and spoon out the seeds. And I'm going to use those seeds, and I'll just throw them into my papaya pile in my yard and just see what sprouts. And if I start growing a papaya tree, if I have room, I'll consider growing one. I did have a papaya tree growing so tall in my previous house that it grew taller in the house, and I just couldn't even get the papayas, they were so tall. So I ended up getting rid of that tree. And actually, papayas aren't a tree, they're actually a weed, believe it or not. They're a very big weed, and a lot of people don't know that. So this is a nice looking papaya here, and I got it from a store where I got other papayas that were nice, and that's a good way to tell. Now, before we get into the demo part or the smoothie part here is, one of the things that's really wonderful on a papaya that people don't know or they haven't been told is lemon, or actually a lime. This is a lime, not a lemon. And basically, I'm gonna squeeze it or press it before I cut it, so it makes more juice come out of it. And this is just your standard lime that you would have in your store, and you cut it open, and you actually, if you pour the lime over the papaya, and then you take your spoon and you just eat the papaya that way, that is the ideal way to eat a papaya, with nice lime juice over it, with a spoon. The papaya is cool out of the refrigerator. That would be ideal and most preferable for what I would suggest. But today we're making a smoothie, and I want to show you how to make the smoothie. So we have our good old Vitamix here, our Vitamix machine. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this half of the papaya on the side over here. We don't need that at the moment. I'll just put it there so it looks nice. And we'll take this part of the papaya. And so I already cut it in half once. I'm going to cut it in half again. So now I have two of these pieces, and I'm going to cut it in half one more time. So now I have 4 pieces of papaya, skinny pieces like this. So what I'll do is I'll take one of these pieces, and I'll simply start cutting it away from the skin and right into the Vitamix. Well, there's different ways you could do it. I could just cut it right over the board here and then put it into the Vitamix. Either way, you want to cut it as close to the skin as possible. So I have this papaya slice. Now, if you slice these, you can throw them in a dehydrator. They're wonderful. And the papaya is a very sweet fruit, especially if it's dried out. It has a high liquid content, and that's why it doesn't taste often as sweet as it does when it's dried. But when you dry it out, it's probably one of the sweetest foods around, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's better than a processed snack because it's all natural, but it's still high in sugar. But because it balanced out so well with so much liquid, ultimately it's a great detoxing food and healing food. So I took the papaya and I stripped it away from the skin as much as possible. So that's one piece down. And if it's easier, you can cut this even again and strip it down even easier. But we're having a good time with that here right now. So I'll just do that again here. And I'll just skin it as much as possible close to the skin. There we go. There's the skin and there's the papaya. So that's another piece. And in the Vitamix, you don't need to cut them down even any less than they already are, because it's such a high-powered blender. But if you're using a regular blender, you could just cut that piece just like that and get them in these little cubes here. And another thing, if you're serving a papaya just in a plate, you could just cut them into these cubes just like I just did and put them in a bowl with lime sprinkled over them. So that's something else you could do. So here's another piece of that. We'll just put that here. So the papaya is it's usually anywhere from 69 cents to $1.50 a pound, at least in most places I've seen, and that could be quite a bit of money considering it's some papayas can be 4 or 5 pounds, maybe even more. And the thing being is it seems like a lot of money, but the bigger the papaya, I mean, of course you can get a lot of meals out of one papaya. So remember, I mean, that's enough for one small smoothie right there, or just for eating a little, and that's only half of what we've used so far. Some people might ask what we could do with the skin or the seeds. The skin is pretty much non-edible to my knowledge. The seeds, however, are edible. Some people do eat them. They're very spicy. I haven't eaten them, or I have tried them, I just don't like them. But some people like them grounded up and to use them like the way you would use pepper or something. Some other people just chewing them, to my surprise, when people told me. But for me, I prefer not to eat those, but some people do. They are nutritious from what I understand. And if that's the case, you might want to throw a couple in your smoothie if you like the spice that it might add. So the last piece here was a little big, so I just cut it into two more pieces, and I'm just gonna cut away from the skin here. Now, even though the skin's not edible, if you get a little piece and by accident you put it in a smoothie, I think you'll be okay, especially if you're going to get organic, even better. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, papaya is one of the foods where they're not sprayed as much as other foods. So if you can't find it organic, on occasion it might be okay to get unorganic if you know it's not genetically modified. Again, you want to stay away from papaya that comes from Hawaii unless you're sure that it's GMO free. So we have our half a papaya in here now, and I'm just making this demo today, so I'm not gonna do the rest of the papaya. I will take the rest of the papaya and save it, maybe have it in the morning. Again, it does oxidize a little, so it's not as ideal to do so. I will try to find room in my stomach if I have to for all of it today, but we'll see. Next is we're gonna get some dates, and these are medjool dates. And many times they're not as easy to find, but this time of year, which is particularly the holiday season, you find a lot of dates in the store, but they're actually pitted. Pitted dates are actually steamed and cooked. The machine heats up at a high temperature to get the seed out. So you don't want to get pitted dates at any time of season. But medjool dates, there are other dates on the market you can get. The date people in California, look them up, and they have a wonderful selection of fresh dates and great prices. But basically, you take the seed out from the date, and it's very important. These seeds are hard, and they could mess up the whole smoothie and possibly your blender, definitely your teeth. So you want to make sure you get the seed out of the date, and you put the date right in there. So that's one. Depending how sweet you might want this or not, will determine how many dates you put in. But there's two right there. And here's three, and let's go for one more. Let's try 4 dates, okay? And here's 4. Now, this is a great sports drink if you've just worked out and you want to even put a little bit more dates if you ran a good amount of miles or something, but it's very refreshing at any time. I enjoy them, especially in the warmer weather. You could, if you desire to, I'm going to put just a little bit of lime juice, just a little bit. You don't have to for the recipe, but I have the lime there that I was showing you, so I figured I do that anyway. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some cinnamon, and I'm just going to take, just a pinch of cinnamon, just a pinch, and put a little cinnamon there. And again, if you don't like cinnamon, you don't need to put cinnamon. The next thing I'm going to do is going to put a pinch of salt. Now, finally, I don't have it with me here now, but keep this in mind. Adding vanilla, a couple of drops of vanilla, or even a vanilla bean would make it ideal. And that is the ideal way to make it, is add some vanilla. So basically, that is the basis for this. And then for the smoothie here, we're just gonna throw in a bunch of ice. We're gonna put a bunch of ice in here. So we got our ice. And you guys can put your comments and questions below the video as we go, and if you have requests for different recipes or different things, we will make them. And you might be thinking, this is a pretty simple recipe. What's so special about it? Well, I want you to get familiar with raw foods and just making interesting, good tasting things like smoothies and dressings. And basically, all recipes, raw food recipes, are simple because you're not heating anything, you're not using an oven. So basically, for the most part, it's just putting stuff in a machine, having the right ingredients, and blending it up or food processing it or something. So all recipes should be as simple as this one if you have the ingredients in front of you. Now, if you're making a raw food lasagna or a raw food burger, it might get a little bit more complicated, but what it comes down to it is you're putting a bunch of ingredients into a food processor or into a blender and blending it up. That's really it. and sometimes you might throw them in a dehydrator, but for the most part, all recipes are this simple. So as long as you have a good recipe with the ingredients, it's not as complicated. Again, you can make this in any blender if you want. We have a lot of ice in there, but I just put just a little bit of water. You don't need to put water in. It depends on the consistency you want. And now we're just going to blend it up. Okay, we just blended that up, and now we're gonna, we have pretty much our smoothie here. And if you don't want to put the cinnamon in, you can garnish it with cinnamon. And again, you don't even need the cinnamon if you prefer not to have it. So we have a nice consistency here, which is not actually a smoothie. It's more like a custard. And that's just the way I wanted it. So if it was a little bit more liquefied with more water, you could drink it, but I prefer to eat it with a spoon. So basically, bon appetit. I'm telling you folks, if you enjoy papaya, you are going to enjoy this smoothie. And that's one of the many different things you can do, and I'll be showing you how to do here in my new studio, my new kitchen. And I appreciate you joining and watching today. Put those comments and questions below the video. Until then, have a great day and a great world life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.